My name is Kelly Morgan, and I've thought for most of my adult life that loyalty, hard work, and suffering would lead to was rewarded. If you gave your family everything, they'd always have your back. I thought that until Friday. In the afternoon, I found out that my parents had quietly put my younger brother in charge of the business I helped them build. Scratch that. Let's go back to before the deception, before the mess, before the our quiet turned into a war, and I was so proud of what we'd done, made of what I had made. I was 29 years old when I took over operations at Morgan and Company Design Build is the name of my parents' family-owned building and remodeling business. Morgan made it happen out of a two-car garage when I was in middle school. Back then, it was just a small business, work on kitchens and patios. But I saw my dad carry plywood while his hands were blistered and my mom chase after him. Clients sent down payments while you managed bills in an old Excel file that crashed every time. You sneezed. When I got my design and business degrees, they were still stuck in the old ways and hadn't done any projects. Management system, but there was still paper contracts that had to be signed with a pen. It was cute, but it couldn't be scaled up. So I went home and went to work. But but because I believed in their dream, I turned it into mine in just 2 years. Streamlined our processes, arranged contracts that tripled our income, and brought in clients with names that my dad used to read about in trade magazines. By the time I was 33, I was in charge of all major accounts, managing staff, and running the whole business, both on paper and in real life. Then there was Landon, my 3 years younger than me. Smart, yes, and driven when he wanted to be, but while I was in the office at 7 a.m., Landon was still getting used to his new surroundings. 2 of his tech startups failed, and he spent a year in Thailand meditating and figuring out who he was as a worker. Didn't mind that at first we were just 2 different people, but things began to change. Changing when Landon came home 2 years ago and wanted to be a part of the family business, and my parents were happy to see him again. My dad gave him the job of executive strategy consultant, and he attended meetings but didn't write down anything. Had big ideas, but couldn't explain how they worked. I stayed late to fix his mistakes, win back a customer who had lost trust, and keep the machine running. I told myself, this is family, be patient. I was devoted to we hadn't found the fault until that Friday, when we finished the final design show. A $5 million deal was made with Hawthorne Properties, who is our biggest client to date. They were ready to move forward after the meeting, so I went into the back office to print some and found an envelope on my chair. It wasn't marked. It just had my name written in my dad's handwriting. In familiar handwriting, there was a copy of a motion that named Landon Morgan CEO of Morgan and Company, effective right away. With no discussion or reason, no words were said. I looked at it for what seemed like an hour. I didn't cry, scream. I just sat there with a cold, empty feeling in my chest. I reread the paper over and over because I was sure it was a draft mistake. My hands went numb. Funny, but it wasn't. My name didn't show up anywhere when I left the office. Past my frame certifications and into the meeting room where Landon was making fun of one of our young architects as if it were any other day, and my parents were nowhere to be found. I knew right then that if they wanted Landon to run the business, he would. I logged in from home that night and backed up my personal files. Over the years, I made a system link and an internal process guide from files on a shared drive that only I had access to. I didn't damage anything. I just took away my what was left was theirs to handle or not, and on Monday of the next week, I didn't go to work and didn't answer the phone when my dad called 5 days later, his voice tense, with worry. Kaylee, we need to talk about Hawthorne's decision to quit. They told us that you are no longer working on the project and that they are not. I sent him a text message back with one line. He's in charge now, so ask your golden boy what would happen. Next, life of our family for all time when I texted, ask your golden boy if he's in. You're going to charge me now, right? I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one for 48 hours. No one could be heard because of the quiet. It felt like the kind that doesn't come from I thought of my dad pacing his office while I was rushing, because I was confused. Messing around with contracts he never read, while my mom pretended nothing was wrong while she served someone tea I didn't feel like making. Not really justified, but I did feel tired because it had been 8 days since when I left Morgan with a friend. I did something I hadn't done in over 10 years. No project calls or texts from clients in the morning, just long walks. I ate meals without interruption and stared at my phone while waiting for a call that never came. My mom's name has been on my screen since Wednesday morning. "Sweetheart," she said right away, her voice sweet. "You've made your point. We need to talk about this in a business setting. Are you free for dinner on Sunday?" Only the four of, "We disagreed about something small over Thanksgiving," I said as I stopped. Dinner. I agreed because I had to, even though it was against my plans and would ruin my future. If you want to know if they knew what they did, look them in the eyes. Sunday came, and I pulled in front of their house at exactly 6 p.m. The door light was on, and I could hear my dad's booming voice inside. With a laugh and the sound of wine glasses clinking, I stood at the front door a few seconds longer than I did. When Landon opened the door, he said, "Hey, Kel," as if nothing had happened. Happened as if we weren't at odds with each other in a war that no one knew about yet. Walked by him without saying anything. The table was set, and Dad sat at the head of the table. Mom was wearing her usual apron and taking something out of the oven. I thought I had sat down without saying anything while he was looking through a leather-bound notebook of his planning notes. After the required small talk, Dad said, "Let's talk about how we move forward. The past few days have been rough. I don't agree with Hawthorne, but I think we can save it." Landon is making a new suggestion, and I raise my hand. "Calm down. I'm not here to fix things. I'm just here to ask a simple question," he said. I looked at him and asked, "Why did you name Landon CEO behind my back?" Directly at him, without any talk or notice. After everything I've done for the company, the room went quiet, and my mom was busy pouring wine to avoid eye contact. My dad sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Hello, Kelly. You've always been there's no doubt that backbone of the business, but you're working. Landon is a big picture thinker with lots of thoughts." I almost laughed when I heard that. Starting a social media campaign with no money or asking for a $200,000 office remodel in the middle of the project, Q4. "He's learning," his mother said, "and he's good with people. He connects with the younger team members, so you gave him the company I asked for and made the one person. What kind of person doesn't understand contracts, licensing, or negotiating with vendors? You were burning out," your dad said, as if that made sense. "You never took holidays and worked late all the time? We thought it might be time to give you a break and let you breathe. You stabbed me in the back because you thought it would help." "Me breathe," I snapped, my voice rising. "You didn't make me feel better." Landon finally spoke up. "It wasn't like that, Kel. I didn't ask for that. This dad told me, you need a break, and I can help you with some things." I looked at him and you said, yes. The title, the office, and the power were yours. But you didn't think to ask why your sister built that. Without realizing it, the group was taking a break. He looked down at his plate and said, "Mom reached for my hand, but you didn't just hurt me. You put me in danger," I said quietly. "Hawthorne, everything I built is ours. Our clients trust our growth. It wasn't just a big job. It was our first step into the high-end building business, but you let them go." Dad looked clearly upset. "Now they'll come back," I said. "They won't. They've already signed with Brenner Group." I checked my words. That's when my dad finally dropped it. The confidence. "What do you want, Kelly?" he asked, his voice barely tense. "We're in a lot of trouble. Do you want us to fail?" "I want to be admired." Said, "I want to be valued, and it's clear that I can't. Get that with Landon as CEO." And working in the background, he didn't answer, and no one else did either. As I reached for my coat, I stood and said, "Enjoy your dinner." I knew this wasn't going to happen when I stepped outside into the cold evening air. Not just a title. It was about finally standing up for what I'm worth, even if that I had to watch everything I had helped build fall apart without me being there. I wasn't scared of the fallout this time, but it was a loud opening. It's not just the lack of sound that can be quiet. It's the echo of everything. That doesn't mean it was in every text message that didn't get delivered, every call I made didn't make, every email I didn't answer after Sunday dinner. I turned it all off. Out of touch with Morgan and her friends. I turned off work and muted the group talks. For once, I wasn't in a hurry. I turned off all of my phone's alerts and let it sit on the counter for hours at a time. Answer someone else's urgent call, but no one showed up. After me, my dad didn't call, my mom didn't cry while she said sorry, and no one showed up out of the blue. I hadn't heard from Landon in a few days and wasn't sure what was going on. How to deal with it, I kept waking up at 5:30 a.m. by itself, only to realize I wouldn't have to be anywhere. I'd make coffee and check my email. I had nothing to check, and was stuck in the silence, not sure what to do next. By Thursday morning, I felt uneasy. I had built Morgan & Company's client network from scratch, and things were becoming more clear. Built systems that saved the company a lot of money every quarter, and has been in charge of all big projects for the past 6 years. I had never written anything down in detail because I didn't want to keep my information to myself. My relationships were personal, and I didn't have a script to follow. They had the title, but I had the power, so I chose to take back my story. So I started putting together a portfolio, not to steal anything from the company, but to keep what I had safe. I wrote down every big client I had brought in, every project I had managed, and every system I had built. Or better, I called Sienna Jacobs, a former coworker who is now an executive agent, and set up a lunch meeting. "You have no idea how in demand someone with your background is," she said after the lunch. "Looking at my resume, you're what they call a unicorn when it comes to technical skills and leadership. Companies that have seen your work before would kill to hire you." I laughed. "That's funny, but my family didn't seem to think that way. Sienna didn't sugarcoat it either. They likely thought less of you because they think they already know you. That's what happens when family members know each other well." Blindness. That line stuck with me. Being used to something makes it blind. Friday, I explained so much that things finally started to fall apart. A message left by one of our top project managers, Clint Reynolds. His voice was tight, like he was trying to sound cool. "Hey, Kelly, I'm sorry to bother you, but do you happen to remember where you put the plans for the Baxter Hills back then? Project Landon says he can't find them anywhere, and the client wants proof by today at 4 p.m. knows how to answer." I didn't answer for an hour, and then I got another message. This is Karen, our head accountant, saying, "Hi, Kelly. I know you're away. We've had trouble with the budget tracking system. It's not syncing with the new figures, and Landon told us about it. He told me to call you. You know what to do. Please call me when you can. Time sensitive." By afternoon, there had been no more quiet. There had been 6 missed calls, 3 emails, and 2 LinkedIn messages. They needed me. But needing someone doesn't mean you value them. They didn't value me enough. To include me in a big leadership choice, they didn't value me enough to let me know before they pulled the rug out from under me. But now that things were breaking quickly, I had to be there for everyone. Again, that night I went for a walk in a nearby park, letting the A's I walked by a group of kids playing on a jungle gym. The cold wind stung my cheeks. As the man sipped hot tea from a thermos and 2 dogs chased each other in the grass, life kept going. It's okay if yours falls apart. The world keeps going. I didn't feel behind for the first time in weeks. It wasn't like I was carrying anyone else's weight. I was just living. And that was, yes, when I got home I did that. I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and sat on my porch to watch the sunset. I heard a siren far away, and then there was quiet again. This time it didn't feel heavy. It felt calm. And then my phone lit up. I called my dad again, but this time there was no message. Please call me right away. I looked at it for a long time, responding with, "What's wrong?" Got a response right away. We lost the Wexler contract. $2. $3 million, they said they don't trust Landon's leadership. There was a pause, and then there was another message. Please call me back. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Began to understand how much it cost to keep quiet. The Wexler account was the second big client to walk in less than 2 weeks, and based on how urgently my dad's texts said they weren't going. It seemed like the Wexler project team had emailed 5 times about missing dates and unclear instructions. When no one reacted professionally, they took it to CEO Landon, who told they were told to calm down and trust the process. But they didn't. So they quit. $2. $3 million in expected sales were lost, and all of a sudden, the title of CEO didn't mean anything. I didn't feel so bright by Monday morning when I had a dozen missed calls from my dad. I didn't answer any of them. It wasn't a small thing. I did it on purpose for years to jump when they needed something. I put out fires I didn't start and fixed mistakes. I smoothed over contracts I wasn't even allowed to sign. But this wasn't my fire to put out. Let them go. Let him lead you. That night I got a knock on the door, not a text or a call. When I heard the knock, I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a short second I thought about not answering, but my interest won out. That was my mother. She stood there with a Tupperware of baked ziti like it was any other visit, not like it was a peace gift wrapped in marinara sauce. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly, taking a step back as if she wasn't sure if I slammed the door in her face, and told her I didn't. I moved out of the way and let her in. I liked how the apartment smelled like lavender and clean clothes. I hadn't cooked in days and mostly just ate. Even though it was leftovers or something that didn't take much thought, the smell of her food brought back memories I didn't expect. In honor of birthdays, late-night study sessions, and family dinners after a long day at work, put the dish on the counter because your dad is having a hard time. I leaned in and said, "Landon is in over his head. We didn't know how much you did until you weren't there to do it. Does that make you feel better, hitting the kitchen island?" "No," she said. "That's just the truth." I crossed my arms to make myself useful again now that everything is falling apart. She jerked as if the words had hurt her. "We made a mistake, and I kept quiet." She went on. "Your father thought Landon needed a win after all the times he dropped the ball. You gave him my life's work because you thought it might help him grow up." Said, getting angry again. "You gave him everything I worked for because you wanted to fix him. We didn't mean to hurt you," she said quickly. "We thought you'd always be there for us. You took advantage of the fact that we knew we could count on you to be there." My mom's shoulders dropped. "I don't know what to do about it, Kelly, but we want to please come back." I slowly shook my head no. "You are going back to the same job, the same rank, and the same demands." Slowed down and moved closer, making it clear who you value and who you don't. Voice. Then what would make it right? That was the question that hung in the air, and it was the first time I let myself say what I hadn't even dared admit out loud before. She looked at him with wide eyes and said, "You want to be CEO?" "No," I said. "I want fairness, real power, and the ability to make decisions." "Taking Landon off the driver's seat would kill your dad," she whispered. "No," I answered, making up my mind. "He made is what's hurting him, and I'm giving him a way out." She looked at me for a long time and then slowly nodded. He said, "I'll talk to him, but I'm not negotiating." I added, "I'm not coming back just to save face." "What's left? If I come back, it's my choice." That night, I emailed my lawyer, friend Jasmine Patel, and asked her to look over the company's rules, including who owns the company and who is appointed CEO. I was ready to talk if they wanted to because I wasn't just returning. I was completely changing what my job was, and the next day I got an email from an address I hadn't seen in a while. Westmore Capital Group one of 2 years ago. I worked with managing directors on a business project, and now they need a head of strategic operations, six-figure salary signing bonus help with moving and total creative control. It's funny how much more valuable you become once you stop begging people to, I knew it. I didn't say yes, and I didn't delete it either. That afternoon, my phone rang. We'd like to meet up because my dad sent us a message. No pressure, just a friendly call. A talk at the Riverstone Club tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. It was going to happen, and I was done waiting for it. They were coming to see me now, and this time, I wasn't going to show up as I showed up with my daughter as the one who had built the kingdom they were now trying so hard to hold on to. I got to the Riverstone Club 5 minutes early and wore a different blue pantsuit. I used to wear it to Morgan and Company planning meetings, but now I wear a new one that stands for, I wasn't coming back to get back what I lost. I was here to talk about how much I'm worth again. The restaurant was empty and white. There are tablecloths and soft music playing in the background of a place you go when you want to look calm. Everything is coming apart. My parents were already sitting at a corner table. My dad was stiff and couldn't be read, and my mom was crying. I saw Landon there too, and he was there too, giving me a hopeful but worried smile. But not enough to throw me off, Kelly, my dad said with a nod as I looked at him. Approached, but there were no hugs or greetings. It was just business. I sat down slowly, keeping my let's get to it. He cleared his throat first. This is what I want to say. That's my fault. I thought I was making a big deal out of your gift. I made a choice that was good for the company's long-term health, but I forgot that you were the company's health. He said, I waited, and I also thought you'd never leave. His voice was getting quieter now. That you'd push through to keep the ship going, which I used to, my advantage. After a long pause, I'm sorry. It wasn't a full apology, but it was more than I. As expected, my mom jumped in. We've been talking about different ways to make this happen. I looked at all three of them, letting the silence stretch, but we want to hear from you first. Landon wouldn't meet. My eyes, and then I said, I'm not coming back to work, and fix mistakes that someone else made while still being subservient to him. I told Landon, you wanted to be CEO, you took the job and the burden, and now you're hurting. Customers and calling me for help. He got angry and said, I didn't ask for this to go thee, I just thought you thought what I interrupted meant you could skip the years of hard work and suddenly become famous because your dad told you. You could run a multi-million-dollar business, $100 million company, without knowing how to read a profit and loss account. His jaw clenched, but he wasn't mad. He knew I was right. I took a deep breath and leaned forward. Terms I gave my dad by putting a written sheet in front of him, 35%. Ownership co-CEO structure, executive vote rights. Landon is in charge of vision and client F-facing work. I'm in charge of operations and strategic execution, and I make all the big choices. Need both signs. His eyes got narrowed. That's a lot, I said. He looked over the paper and said, this would give you equal control. Not more or less equal, my mom looked back and forth between us. What about the staff? Clients, won't they be confused by the change in leadership? I smiled again. Clients don't trust the company because the leadership isn't stable, so they're already a little lost. I told him, bring me back with clarity and authority, and don't just stop the bleeding, rebuild trust. He let out a sharp breath. If we say no, I'll walk away, I said, and I'll go to Westmore Capital for good. They have already given me the job of director and are happy for me to bring clients with me, such as Anderson and Wexler. My dad looked really scared. If you really did that, I'd rather start from scratch than keep supporting something that makes me look bad, Landon. I finally asked, what if I quit as CEO? He shrugged and said, let's be. Being honest, Kelly, I think I'm over my head. I thought I could handle it, but I've been floating since the beginning. Under pressure, he said, it's not what I thought it would be. His voice cracked. I don't want to be the one who causes us to lose everything that Dad and Mom worked so hard for. If giving you power will fix this, then that's fine. I think that was the most grown-up thing my brother had ever said. I looked down at the paper again, and then up at myself. I'll have Harold write up an agreement, I said, quietly. Good. I agreed. I want it signed and filed before I leave. In that room and your title, he asked. I told him I was Chief Operating Officer, but I'll be pretty much in charge right next to Landon. There was nothing else we could say. Not as father and daughter, but as business partners, they shook hands. In 10 days, papers were signed for a 35% stake in the business and shared executive power. There was a legally binding deal that said Morgan and Company could not make any big decisions without my permission. I didn't go back to the company looking for work. I went back as a woman who had shown her worth by leaving, and had the guts to set the terms for her return. It was the first time in years that I wasn't feeling guilty and tired. I was going back into that building on my own terms, not because of misplaced patriotism. It felt great. At first, the staff was careful, which I didn't blame. While I was away, reports spread that I had been fired, while others said I'd people. Could tell I had changed when I wore different clothes to the Monday meeting when I quit, because the truth was less clear. I told you the truth, and my certainty is like armor. I'm not here to change the past. A few weeks ago, I told them that what was done, and that I was here to fix what we. There was a pause, and then Clint said, "Lost and take us somewhere. Better." "Kelly, we missed you," one of the top project managers said. The room breathed out, and so did I. Landon did the right thing by not running away from the change. He kept his job as co-CEO and worked on outreach and branding. And artistic. Vision were things he liked, and he got better because he paid attention. Stop trying to be a boss and start acting like a partner. We weren't best friends yet, but we were finally there. Aligned my father, he had trouble not with my authority, but with his pride. It was hard for his daughter to lead meetings of the command board, renegotiate vendor contracts, and get back the Anderson account. Pill to swallow because the daughter he had once told to stay in her lane was now changing the highway. But he finally came about 3 weeks after I got back. A man in khakis and a worn-out work polo stopped by my office without a tie. "I saw how you fixed the damage caused by Wexler," he said, pointing to the glass wall in my office. "You didn't just clean up, you saved the relationship," I replied. "Because I knew how they felt. I've been building that trust for years." He nodded again and then looked down. "I should." I didn't say, "You should have seen it sooner," because he already knew. Said, "Now you see it, that's why I stayed late that night. Not because I was rewriting our client onboarding strategy because I wanted to. Not because I had to. I couldn't stop writing." Ideas at 7:45 p.m. as the last of the office lights turned off one by one. After the staff left for the night, I stood by the window and looked out over the city. Things looked different now. It wasn't about getting back at them anymore. It was about getting back what was mine. I wasn't just building a business, I was building a life. The kind of life where I didn't have to prove my worth all the time. After 2 months of hard work, Morgan and his team got their biggest deal yet. The client had heard about our $7.2 million business development in downtown transformation in leadership and told me straight, "We want to work with whoever saves your company from." It's funny how things keep going full circle. As I left that meeting with the contract in hand, I got a text. From my mom. Sunday dinner, just the two of us. No work talk promise. I smiled. Maybe we were getting better that night as I sipped wine on the patio and watched the city skyline come to life. I thought about everything that had happened. The lie, the quiet, the walk away, the reckoning, the rise, and the rebirth if I've learned that dedication is useless without respect. Family isn't much if you don't tell the truth, and sometimes being quiet doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong.